Thank you, Shelley. It's a pleasure to serve with you and have you on our board at MREA, and thank you, Brian. Exciting times for Connexus and its members, with Brian as the new CEO here, an excellent leader with a great combination of skills to continue to build this successful organization in the future. I am Darrick, the CEO of the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. We're the statewide association that serves the 50 rural electric cooperatives. Collectively, about 85% of the land mass is served by co-ops across the state, and about a third of the population of the state is served by our members. We do many things for our member cooperatives, including working with them on energy policy, the focus of the few minutes that I'll have today. I graduated from the electrical engineering program at the University of Minnesota some time ago, studying how the electric power grid functions, and have spent a career in the field working to understand that very thing. And we stand at a critical crossroad. The North American electric grid, characterized as the most complex machine ever created, was identified by the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering as the single most important invention of the 20th century. That's not the century we're in now, it's the century that turned before. So I would say the 20th century brought us every important invention, pretty much everything between fire and TikTok came. And we stand to anticipating now that this invention will serve us even better in the coming century as we decarbonize the power grid and move even more of society's energy needs to the electrical system. And as somebody that has worked my whole career in that system, I look forward to it filling an even larger role for my grandchildren than it has for all of us. That is, if we can avoid breaking it. Our society is totally dependent on an ample, affordable electricity being ever present, whenever and wherever we need it. We spent 130 years piecing together electrical components across the country and getting them to operate in one complex integrated machine. An important thing to understand about that power system is that at every moment, it must be in an exact and delicate balance. The amount of electricity we draw from it collectively as a neighborhood, as Connexus, as the state of Minnesota, as the country, must exactly match the amount of electricity being produced at that moment. And if it does not, the system collapses. Everything goes dark, and restarting it is a costly and time-consuming endeavor. And how fast can such a collapse happen? Electricity moves at precisely the speed of light, even faster than the rule moved. Unlike water delivery systems, you can't position electricity strategically around the country in holding tanks and then dispatch it over minutes or hours as people need it. As new load is called for, as you flip switches, as you turn motors on, as new data centers light up, electricity needed must immediately respond and be placed on the grid at the same time to keep the whole thing operating. So what does that have to do with energy policy? The entities responsible for keeping the power grid functioning, entities like MISO and the North American Electric Reliability Council, are warning that the balanced portfolio of generation sources we have built over the last 130 years is changing too rapidly to be sure we'll hold together reliably under all conditions we face today and in future years. The last couple of decades have seen rapid growth in wind and solar energy. These resources have been effectively integrated and provide affordable electricity in many conditions. Fortunately, we will see continued growth of the wind and solar industry and those energy sources on our power grid. That's a good thing. We must also have sources of electricity that we can control, that are available at night and when the wind isn't blowing. And energy policy is currently making it more difficult to build these sources of energy and is pushing existing generation sources to shut down sooner than previously planned. Those overseeing reliability, therefore, now warn that there are hours of the year when electricity consumption is at its heaviest that we may not have enough generation to serve all of those needs. If that happens, power companies will either need to intentionally shut off some people's electricity or risk the entire network collapsing. Because if you don't keep electricity use in supply in constant balance, that is exactly what occurs. To be clear, I am not talking at Connexus' annual meeting about their plan for tomorrow. I'm not talking about Connexus at all. I'm talking about the industry as a whole. And I'm not talking about any particular day or moment. I'm talking about what we face over the next several years as an industry. In Minnesota, the legislature recently passed a law requiring all electricity used in the state be carbon-free by 2040. A law that Connexus has an excellent plan to comply with, by the way. The grid, however, was already rapidly transitioning to carbon-free resources. Connexus and other cooperatives have been rapidly building wind and solar and have continued aggressive plans to do more of the same. Building more of it is good. But there are real-life risks that policy pressures force the power grid into an unsustainable situation under some conditions. You can look at the generation mix at any particular moment. MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operator, provides this information real time. They are tasked with controlling the real-time generation and ensuring that when you flip a switch or turn on a load, there will be sufficient generation available immediately to respond. I encourage you to go to their website, download their app, take a look as you go through your day, your week, your months, at how much power is coming from which generation resources. You'll find this revealing, I think, and you'll probably find it to be less stress than fixating only on the stock market ticker. In some hours, wind is over 50% of the total. But there are also many hours in which the combination of wind and solar energy is only a few percentage points of the total. Natural gas, coal, and nuclear energy serve 70-80% or more of our needs in those hours. Not because wind and solar are available and just not on. They are used first whenever it's sunny and windy. In those hours, when it's supplying only a tiny portion of our needs, it's because the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. Those resources are simply unavailable. The notion that we can build a power grid and rely solely on wind and solar energy, supported by a little battery storage, is dangerous. Connexus is a national leader in deploying storage, and it will have a growing and important role. Storage helps fix the challenge I've talked about of producing and using electricity simultaneously. But it is not possible to build enough storage with the available technology to move to a grid with wind and solar supported by a little battery storage. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, consider the battery system you can install that Tesla sells and put in your garage. If you look at posted prices for those systems and calculate how much it would cost to install enough of those systems on the power grid to supply 3 days of energy, you come up with a total of $400 trillion. That's 4.5 times the gross planetary product. So to supply 3 days of storage, you need for the globe, you need 4.5 times what the globe could produce in a year. That's without any generation. So remember, storage doesn't actually generate electricity. It only stores electricity. Batteries are great, and innovations in this area will continue to be needed to allow storage to continue to do a better job in the long run of supplementing the power grid. But they cannot do the job by just adding them to wind and solar. And I've heard people respond, well, innovate. Carbon-free by 2040 is 15 years from now. Hoping for innovation, referencing innovation with an implied authority and optimism is more like Gnosticism than genuine faith. It's a claim to some hidden knowledge that will save us. But underpinning that claim is just plain fantasy. It's like unicorns saving us, or the Loch Ness Monster, perhaps, or finding Sasquatch. The reality is we must keep enough controllable generation online to balance renewable energy in a reliable way. We need to slow down the shutdown of fossil fuel in the meantime. And I tell you all of this to say about energy policy in Minnesota that we need to unleash the potential of nuclear energy to supplement these resources in the state. In 1994, the Minnesota legislature imposed a moratorium on building nuclear generation. Nuclear does not depend on the weather or the time of day. It is a reliable source available at all times, and it is carbon-free. With the new law requiring all electricity being carbon-free, it is inappropriate that this moratorium continue. Nuclear power currently provides half of the state's carbon-free electricity, but even if existing generators operate forever, which of course would be another fantasy, that share will diminish as consumption grows, as AI increases electricity use, and as the economy is further electrified. Nuclear energy is by far the safest source of electricity in existence, considering the entire fuel cycle and all impacts on humanity. It has bipartisan support across the country. Both the Biden and the Trump administration have been clear about the need for nuclear power to fuel tomorrow's energy needs. And spent fuel has been safely dealt with. All of the spent fuel the industry has ever created nationally could fit within inside one football stadium, and no human harm has ever been marked by storing the spent fuel. Zero. Nuclear power also uses less land than any other alternative, by far. So lifting the state's inappropriate moratorium on nuclear power is one of the biggest priorities that cooperatives have been working on at the legislature this session. We are leading a coalition of 37 different organizations above and beyond the co-ops, in addition to our 50 members, 37 other organizations formed solely for the purpose of accomplishing this task, including labor unions who recognize that nuclear energy would bring excellent career opportunities, including environmental groups, understanding what I've talked about the need to achieve a carbon-free future, and also one where sources of energy are available at all times of the day, and includes the state's utilities, trying to keep the lights on as we transition to this carbon-free environment. Lifting the moratorium would not mean building any particular plant. Building a plant would involve all the required permitting and public review. It would be demonstrating that the nuclear plant is the most affordable alternative available, as any plant needs to demonstrate before it is built. What lifting the moratorium would do is remove one "thou shalt not" currently in place, do only the policy. It would release Minnesota's utilities and our universities and labor unions, release them from bondage of a moratorium, and allow them to consider the vitally important carbon-free resource. Allow Minnesotans to participate in the nuclear renaissance that is currently gaining momentum across the world and across the rest of the country. I appreciate that Connexus has been working with us on this priority. Within the last couple of years, the North American Electric Reliability Council, which sets the standard to make the grid operating reliably, took the surprising step of including policy as one of the top 5 threats to the reliability of the power grid at this time. So we stand at a critical crossroad. Will legislators pass energy policies ensuring the grid remains viable while it picks up a bigger share of our economy and continues to decarbonize? Cooperatives are quickly decarbonizing the power grid and working to keep the electricity grid always available and affordable in the process. And working together on important policy matters, such as lifting the state's moratorium, is one great example